to our special presentation about the Gettysburg Address, one of the most powerful speeches given in U.S. history. In July 1863, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, was the location of one of the most crucial battles of the Civil War. For 3 days, General George Meade's Army of the Potomac and the Confederate Army under General Robert Lee fought a bloody battle. Eventually, the Confederate Army was defeated on July 4th and retreated towards Virginia. Casualties were enormous. Out of 170,000 soldiers, over 50,000 soldiers lost their lives on both sides. Fallen Union soldiers were buried quickly close to the battlefield, often without marking their graves. Soon after, David Willis, a local lawyer, initiated the creation of a national cemetery at Gettysburg and invited President Abraham Lincoln to speak at the cemetery's official dedication ceremony on November 19, 1863. Following is some rare footage of parts of Lincoln's historic speech.
77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives, and that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Joining me today are 3 experts who will help me analyze the Gettysburg Address. Please welcome Professor Christy Gozer, head of the English department at Oaks Christian University, Dr. Justin Newman, founder and president of the Conejo Valley Institute for American Identity, and Dr. Brian Trimmer, world-famous historian and Civil War scholar. Professor Gozer, are there any important language choices, such as diction or syntax, in the Gettysburg Address?
Well, this is a very short speech, only 273 words and about 2 minutes long. Lincoln's language is plain spoken and direct. He avoids flowery phrases and complex political rhetoric, which was common at that time. His concise style resembles the brief dispatches commonly transmitted by telegraph during the Civil War, and the Gettysburg Address reflected this faster, more modern way of communication. As a matter of fact, Edward Everett, a former Secretary of War, who also spoke at the ceremony, was so impressed by the president's official language that he later wrote to Lincoln, "I wish that I could flatter myself that I had come as near to the central idea of the occasion in 2 hours as you did in 2 minutes."
Dr. Newman, how have Lincoln's words contributed to our identity as Americans?
Lincoln argues that the Founding Fathers had stated their intentions for our nation in the Declaration of Independence, and not, as commonly believed, in the Constitution. Although he never used the word slavery in his speech, Lincoln pointed out that one of the ideals stated in the Declaration of Independence was that all men are created equal. At that time, this was a radical interpretation, considering that slaves were treated as property, and slave owners regularly pointed out that the Constitution did not explicitly outlaw slavery. Today, we accept that people of all races are equal. Lincoln also called the United States government a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, a reminder that our country and its ideals are for all Americans, not just a few. Today, we take this idea for granted, but back then, this was a new way of seeing our society and government.
Dr. Trimmer, the Gettysburg Address is one of the most cited speeches of all times. Why are these words so important?
This speech is so important because rather than speaking about the war or the hostility between the North and the South, Lincoln focused on the big picture and chose to talk about the country's unity. He characterized the war as a test of whether the United States would stay together as one nation or perish from the earth. Lincoln emphasized that the fallen soldiers had lost their lives while fighting for American ideals like equality, freedom, and self-government, and he appealed to the people to honor these fallen heroes by preserving the Union and its representative democracy.
Thanks to our panel for their insight and for coming all the way from Westlake Village to our East Coast studio.